Hi everyone, today we're going to talk about homeostasis. And we're going to talk about it at the cellular level as well as the entire organism. Now mammals are an open system. We exchange matter and energy with their surroundings, and we do that constantly at every minute, every second of the day. So our homeostasis is more like a dynamic equilibrium than just something we achieve and hang on to. And that's because we have a constant exchange, whether it be gas, temperature, food, waste, any of that. Now, when we're discussing exchange at a cellular level, what we're talking about is things will leave the blood. This is a capillary. Remember, capillaries are 1 cell thick. They're incredibly thin, so things can diffuse. Here's your cell. And then we have interstitial fluid. Okay, so things like oxygen will diffuse out of the blood into the interstitial fluid into the cell. And things like carbon dioxide will diffuse out of the cell into the interstitial fluid and into the blood. And that's part of how we are an open system at the cellular level. Homeostasis is the active maintenance of a constant or steady state within the body. So even though our external environment could fluctuate, think about just even the temperatures in the springtime. In the day, it could be 65, 70 degrees Fahrenheit. I can't believe I'm using Fahrenheit, but I am. And then at night, it can drop all the way down to 30 degrees. But within your body, you're going to stay right around 98.6. And you have both behavioral and physiological mechanisms to maintain that consistent environment no matter what's happening in the external environment. That's homeostasis. Just as a quick reminder, endotherms are warm-blooded, so no matter what the outside temperature is, endotherms are going to maintain a constant internal temperature, where ectotherms don't. They don't waste their energy maintaining a consistent internal temperature. They allow their internal temperature to match their external temperature. So how can they survive this? Their bodies, through evolution, can actually slow down to a state where they're not digesting, they're not really doing anything. It's almost like a hibernation in extreme cold. Then they use behavioral mechanisms in order to change their body temperature. Like snakes will sun themselves on a rock if they need to digest their food or if they're chilly. But if it's too hot, then they will hide in a cool place underneath a rock or underneath leaf litter or something like that. The hypothalamus is a portion of your brain that's your control center for homeostasis. If you were to stick your finger through the roof of your mouth all the way up through your nose, you'd be poking your hypothalamus. It's right here. The hypothalamus kind of blurs the lines between the endocrine and nervous system. And basically what it does is it takes in information, and the hypothalamus is going to control things like sweating, shivering, thirst, even like sleep-wake, hunger, all these things. And it communicates then to the pituitary gland, and the pituitary gland will then create and release hormones that will help control these actions. For example, if you're dehydrated, the hypothalamus will kind of take in that information. It will send that information to the posterior pituitary gland, and that will make a hormone called ADH, which will be sent down to your kidneys so that you'll reabsorb water. Negative feedback loops are also how your body maintains homeostasis. So kind of a basic example of a negative feedback loop would be the thermostat in your house. All negative feedback loops have a receptor, something that's going to gather that information. So in this example, your thermostat. And that's going to have an effector. Okay, so if the temperature gets high in the house, then the furnace, the effector, will shut off and it will lower the temperature. But if the temperature drops within your house, the effector or the furnace will turn on and regulate that temperature. Here's a quick little cheat. If you're trying to figure out if something is a positive or negative feedback, we'll talk about positive in a couple minutes. You'll know it's negative feedback because there will be this figure 8. There will be mechanisms to correct if something gets too high, and there will be mechanisms to correct if something gets too low, creating kind of a figure 8. let's look at our negative feedback systems that help maintain our internal body temperature of 37 degrees Celsius or 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. If you become hot, it's a hot day out, you're out in the sun, your hypothalamus is going to recognize this and activate certain cooling mechanisms. Your blood vessels are going to dilate. This means that your blood will be closer to the surface of your skin and can allow heat to escape. You're also going to sweat, and sweat takes those high energy molecules off the surface of your skin to cool you. And eventually, this will lower your temperature to a 98.6. Okay, what if it's cold out and you begin to feel cold inside? Your hypothalamus will recognize that. Your blood vessels will constrict, making sure it's not losing heat out of the surface of your skin. And then you will even shiver, which are small muscle contractions that generate heat. And your body temperature will eventually increase. And again, notice we have that figure 8 of a negative feedback system. Okay, let's look at the negative feedback loop of glucose. So I ate a big pasta dinner, all right, lots of glucose in there, and my blood glucose levels are going to go up. The beta cells in the pancreas will then release insulin, and insulin is like the key that's going to get that glucose into my cells. So my cells will take up the glucose, so then I can do some cell resp. Okay, but the cells can't store glucose. So where am I going to store it? It's going to be my liver that stores it in the form of glycogen. And glycogen is basically just a long chain of glucose molecules. The glucose is now in my cells are stored as glycogen, so my blood levels will drop to that normal level. Now, let's say I've skipped breakfast and went right to school, and my blood glucose levels are really dropping. The alpha cells of my pancreas will be stimulated to release glucagon. And that's going to go into the blood, and it's going to head into the liver. And what that's going to do is it's going to cause that glycogen to break apart into glucose and get released into the blood. Once that glycogen is broken apart into glucose, my blood levels will increase back to the normal level. And again, I've got that figure 8. Positive feedbacks are different from negative feedbacks. They do not maintain homeostasis. What a positive feedback is going to do is it's going to amplify a physiological process until we achieve an event. So the example I'm going to give you is birth. We're going to amplify a physiological process until we achieve the event of the baby being born. Okay, so when a baby's born, its head will push down against the cervix, and that creates quite a bit of pressure. Nerve impulses send this information up to the brain. The brain will then, it's going to be again that pituitary gland, is going to release oxytocin. Oxytocin is then going to get carried to the uterus, and what it will do is cause the uterus to contract, those muscles to contract, and that will push the baby farther down. That will then increase the pressure as the baby's head will push harder on the cervix. Then there will be more frequent nerve impulses to the brain. The pituitary gland will produce more oxytocin, which will travel to the uterus and produce more contractions, which will increase the pressure. And this is going to continue to amplify until the baby actually passes through the birth canal. Once the baby's born, the entire mechanism is shut off. There's no more pressure against the cervix, so therefore there's no more messages being sent to the brain, no more oxytocin released, and we're done. That's positive feedback. Notice there's no figure 8 loop. We're just amplifying a process until we achieve an event. Plants also use positive feedback loops for fruit ripening. So this will also explain why if you pack fruit into your lunch, even if it's not overly ripe in the morning, it might be by lunchtime, or if you have a fruit bowl and one piece of fruit becomes so ripe it even begins to rot, all the other fruit in the fruit bowl may do it as well. So ethylene is the plant hormone produced in fruit, and it actually becomes a gas. And what it does is it encourages ripening. Okay, so if this apple right here begins to ripen, it's going to emit ethylene. And that's going to cause the apple next to it to ripen and emit ethylene, which will cause this one to ripen and emit ethylene. Notice I'm just amplifying, and the goal here is to get all the fruit to ripen at once. All right, you guys, that's our talk on homeostasis. I hope this was helpful for you.